This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and hot every day. 6 great flavors of slushies, ready-to-drink cocktails, High Noon, Jack Daniels, Crown Royal. And the pickle bar, led by the barrels and the dills, indeed second to none. All at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've spent lunches together. We've talked for hours, so we're confined to a half hour here. Tony Knopp, welcome back, sir.
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you? Are you hanging in there with everything that has happened in Southern California and everything?
It is busy. It is fun. We're very blessed. Things are going great.
That's great. You earned it. All of it. Okay, so let's start with this. The NCAA basketball tournament, they will not expand in 2026, but it doesn't mean the door is closed to possibly 76 teams maybe in 27. But they've already said they're not going to do it this year. How close are they on television alignment to allow them to do this?
I think the understanding is what's going to happen with streaming rights. And there are some games in the early rounds that they're still trying to figure out. That's my understanding from the people that work on the TV side as to where the hiccup is. The money's there, and the viewership is there. The thing that the viewers can understand, and I don't know what it's towards. I mean, a lot of people would say there's the sports betting component. Other people would just say it's the drive of sports. That even a very early round qualifier game between two schools we've never heard of is going to outperform 85% of what's on television. Yeah. So there is no question this is going to happen. Right now, everybody's just trying to negotiate the electoral college, so to speak, as to who's going to be protected from what.
Yeah, because I think they've been smart about what they've done with this. UCLA has been in the first 4. Last year, North Carolina was in the first 4 to go with the teams you talked about. They've done a good job of putting some marketable teams in that first 4.
And it allows them to do that without feeling like they lose competitive integrity.
That's right.
That's always going to be the argument about, somebody's left out, and we've seen it across, everything. You expand the college football playoff, you're going to feel like instead of, number 3 got left out, then number 13 got left out, then number 18 got left out, and we've seen that in college basketball, especially with the automatic berths. And that's one thing they want to make sure that they don't lose is the regional, local, smaller conference auto berths. Yeah. That's been the argument as everything in college football, college basketball has.
By December 1st, they have to have some decision as to what to do the next year under the new contract. You and I both know they want to go to 16. Is it available television-wise to go to 16? And why is ESPN giving up a semifinal game to TNT?
I don't know. That's one thing I don't understand.
I'm baffled.
I know we just saw that ESPN and the ownership stake the NFL is taking in it and how they're going to expand it. To me, that seems symbiotic. Like you wouldn't give that up if that was the case. Yeah. There's definitely enough viewership to do it. It was a home run having the on-campus games in the first round last year. They're going to have to do some reseeding, but I think everybody understands that. But the money is there.
Yeah, no, the money is definitely there. Without question. So ESPN keeps teasing what they want to do with this new platform, which is $29.99 a month.
Direct to consumer.
Yeah, direct to consumer. What's your thought on the future of direct to consumer, and how important is it for ESPN to be successful out of the gate doing this?
I've had a lot of conversations about this with people who know this a lot better than I do, people who are in that space and are trying to understand what the DTC market looks like. Right. There are so many variables that we don't consider when we're looking at it, such as how they're starting to understand who the buyer is, what they can sell to the buyer, how the advertising changes as it becomes directly targeted, what that looks like at the school level, right? There was a huge move, as we both know, in the early 2000s into the mid-2010s, where there was like this conglomeration and consolidation of rights across, different private entities that were selling it for the universities and selling it for for others. And that's kind of going away. People are getting more local now and realizing that they have more value in it. And, we've seen some stumbles along the way. The biggest of them was the Pac-10, Pac-12 network or whatever that was. So what they're trying to understand on the ESPN side is you're looking at subscriber value just drop. And they're looking at data and saying that we're the only reason people are paying for cable anymore is for ESPN. So why are we doing this? Why are we floating everybody else? And it's really interesting how the questions come together because it's almost the same situation as we're seeing with the NCAA expanding the Final Four tournament or the March Madness tournament and with CFP expanding. Everybody sees how these markets are about to fragment going forward. And they've seen what's happened in other leagues where they've done this. And so they're trying to protect themselves from the future. That's really all this is. I don't believe there's a big argument about how we can get more money out of it right now. But people are looking at what's happened in the EPL, in Major League Baseball, where we may or may not be headed towards a work stoppage. In the NHL, where we had a horrible haves and have-nots problem until the lockout of 2005, 2006.
Right.
And what's really happening right now is ESPN is saying, we are floating cable rights for most subscribers. Right. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to take the money for ourselves. The SEC and the Big Ten are saying, look, we believe that we're the reason the CFP is as popular as it is, and we want to make sure that we're getting our cut of it the way the original six did in the English Premier League. And it goes all the way back to what you asked about the NCAA tournament, which is we want to make sure that if we do expand this and we do look out for the little guys so we can get more North Carolinas and UCLAs in, that the pie is split appropriately. So sorry for the tangent, but it's all the same argument.
Yeah. No, it is the same argument. It's been 1 year now of official play with the 4 Pac-12 schools in the Big Ten, USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington. Right? So give me the L.A. Viewpoint about what they think of the Big Ten versus what it was like being in the Pac-12.
Well, here's what's happening with USC in particular. USC had a very unpopular president, Carol Folt.
Yes.
She was brought in at the end of USC being on the wrong side of just about every single bad PR, problem there was. And she cleaned it up and made the institution more academic. When she did that, most of the major boosters, many of whom I know, said, look, we're not going to put money into this program right now because she refuses to sign off as Fight On. She doesn't feel like that's inclusive. Well, Carol is gone. For the last year or two, I haven't talked about this publicly, but now we can because it's over. For the last couple of years, I know a few of the biggest boosters, and they said, just watch what happens in 2026. We're going to put money behind Lincoln. Lincoln knows that we don't really care how he does this year and in 2025. So, Steve, who has the number one recruiting class in 2026?
USC.
USC does. So nobody out here is really putting a whole lot of eggs in the basket of the Big Ten right now. They're kind of saying, this is a lion that hasn't woken up. They're not spending money. They haven't had the boosters behind them. They're about to beef up the office of the, CEO, so to speak, and build that out. UCLA was, as you know, it was a marriage of necessity. UCLA was going under.
Right.
Publicly funded institution in a state that's broke. That was $107 million in the red because of the Under Armour deal that went south. So, UCLA it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that program because the institution itself, the facilities are not up to par with what's happening in the Big Ten. And there's just this kind of malaise that's like, well, we had to do it when you're UCLA. Whereas USC saying, we'll see y'all next year.
Yeah, I think at Oregon they like it. I think at Washington, I think they're hanging in with it.
Love it.
Yeah. Now, the next one is the world-famous WNBA. Very few leagues get more positive publicity in the past year than they do. Yeah, I was looking at the ratings numbers, and some game they were touting as a great rating was 788,000. Okay. Their basic collective bargaining agreement runs out, and look, I know that they're making, Caitlin Clark makes $84,000. Now, it does seem in the sport a bit ridiculous.
Right. She's probably taking home $10-15 million a year.
Yeah. Oh no. Her advertising is $10 or $15 million, and her base salary is $84,000 in the WNBA. In reality, Where are they in the sports landscape? I mean, the reality of it versus the fantasy of it.
That's a great question. I love the way it's worded. The money shows that there's something there for the first time in 20 years. And what I mean by that is how much they're paying for franchises. People aren't going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on something that's not worth that. It feels to me like the WNBA is where the MLS was in like in the late 2000s.
Yes. Yeah.
Where, okay, we're starting to have some superstars that are going to anchor the league. And the MLS went through it wasn't a stoppage, but they went through a negotiation where they carved out a way for you to pay your stars. Because they just kind of understood that if you're going to have Messi here, if you're going to have Olivier Giroud, if you're going to have David Beckham, and Beckham was the first one to really do it. He was the Caitlin Clark of the MLS. So the thing about the WNBA is it gets a lot of positive press. The viewership isn't all the way there yet, but it's comparable to what the MLS was in 2000 to 2005. It's on the way up. Advertisers like to spend money with it. If they can find a way in the collective bargaining negotiations to find a way to pay stars separately and have, the way MLS works is you have certain slots that you can use for those stars. I think we're going to see some truth to it, and we're going to see somebody get there. The problem is going through work stoppages. So I worked in the NHL during the 2005 work stoppage. It's really hard to believe the numbers that come out because, they're going to come out and say, oh, they lost $40 million. And the first question is, okay, according to whose numbers? And they're going to say, third-party auditing firm that we hired, it's Deloitte or KPMG or whatever else. And it's going to say, well, but you hired them.
Right.
And I know you were around, and I was in 2005, where there was competing sets of numbers every 2 months.
Yep.
So I don't know what to believe with that, who's actually winning and losing on that. I do know that franchise values are going up. I do know that there's bidding awards for the franchise values, and I do know that they look like they're starting to mature like most leagues do, where they're starting to understand that some of the markets, Connecticut Sun, whatever else, may not work. And some of the markets do, right? And we see that with mature leagues. I mean, the NHL poured how much money into Phoenix trying to make that a market? They poured how much money into Atlanta trying to make that a market? Yeah. Right? Nobody's immune from this. I mean, Major League Baseball has 3 or 4 markets right now that I don't even understand how they're solvent if it weren't for the revenue sharing.
Right. Oh, no, that's absolutely right. Now, because the minority owner of the Celtics has put on the table $325 to buy the Connecticut Sun and move them from Uncasville up to Boston. Yet the Connecticut Sun was I think has been the only franchise in the league that actually has turned a profit at any point, which is interesting. Eventually you run out of
goal.
Yeah, I mean, you run out of
to kind of turn a profit, right? Yeah. We either need to see the profits go up significantly, and that doesn't generally happen. For the listeners, it doesn't generally happen because you profit share with the players. So, the NBA is 51% go to the players. So a year-over-year profit isn't that important as it is franchise value. So you see teams go from, $300 million to $5 billion. That's where the real value is.
How much has the split with LIV driven down? Even though LIV players can play in the U.S. Open, because I covered Oakmont, I was at the U.S. Open.
Mm-hmm.
So they're there, but the USGA is not going to get anywhere near the money they got in the previous contract. Why?
What's so interesting about this is all of the battle lines that were drawn seem to be much weaker than everybody thought. And what's really changing behind the scenes with LIV is they are signing on major sponsors. That was always the question, was how are they going to maintain this on the PIF's dime if they don't get major corporate sponsors in their events? Well, now they do. HSBC has signed on amongst a number of others. And what's happening is it's starting to bifurcate the events. And so I think what's happened personally is the negotiating position of the PGA Tour isn't as strong as it once was. I think that LIV has found, just like we're talking about with MLS and WNBA, they have found those foothold locations like Adelaide, like others, where it's an event, and it's an event that's comparable to the events that we see with the PGA Tour. And now the USGA is standing here. It has nothing to do with this fight, and they're being impacted by it. So at some point, I feel like those organizations are going to start to put some pressure on the PGA Tour to get a deal done with LIV. And LIV becomes the international arm of the tour, so to speak.
Yeah, because
I mean, we've seen this before. I know some of the listeners probably aren't as old as you and I are, but the USFL had some stay in some of the different markets, and you see this stuff that starts to hurt, and eventually somebody has to come to the table.
Yeah, no, some of those USFL teams, especially Tampa Bay, had some traction. Yeah. I mean, they had some traction.
And they had stars.
Yeah.
Jim Kelly, Steve Young are mattered.
Oh.
They're mattered.
Oh, they had.
Can you imagine Drew Aller coming out next year and playing for not the NFL?
And that's what happened. Jim Kelly came out of Miami. He said, "I'll go to Houston." Steve Young, hey, I'll come out of BYU. I'll go play for Los Angeles. Okay, Doug Flutie.
Jim Kelly's choices were Houston and Buffalo. Right?
Yeah. So that's what people don't remember. Something like that. What's coming down the pipeline, in your opinion, that's really worth looking into the crystal ball and saying we need to take a closer look at that?
Well, a lot. This is a weird time for sports business because we had kind of consistency in growth and consistency in governorship for a really long time. From, I'd say, 2006 to 2018, right after we got through the work stoppages, because we had that just era of the work stoppage. 94, 95 with baseball, and then hockey, or then basketball, and then hockey did it. And basketball did it 3 times, I think. And so you had this like choppy water in those sports where you were trying to figure out who was doing what, and baseball got crushed in that 94 stoppage. I mean, crushed.
Yes.
I use the example all the time that the Dodgers went from 38,000 season ticket holders to 12.
Yep.
And I think they're back up to 21. Yep. So they're nowhere close to where they were at that point. So we had this consistency, and then we had COVID came, and it just rocked everything, and there was no normal. Now, with the proliferation of capital going into live events, and I think it's going to continue to do that because of how noisy it's gotten in digital, there are a couple of different storylines that I'm following that I just have no idea how they're going to play out. Number one is the money in college football. The House decision is significant. It changes everything for kids coming up, especially when you're talking about non-football sports. You're seeing universities all over the country cutting programs that have tons of history for them, and they have to because of the money that's happening there. They're starting to run those organizations more like a business. They're bringing in, what used to be the athletic director's job. Now you have a GM. Now you have professionals coming in that are running it more like private equity, and private equity money is coming into it, which is turning that into a business, and that's going to filter all the way down. And eventually we're going to reach a point where the money's going to dry up.
Yeah.
It's just been one of those things where sports just grows and grows and grows because people love it. But now we've got the World Cup coming here next year, the Olympics coming in 2028, money flowing all over the place when it comes to the NCAA and what's going to happen there and with amateurism. And then we've got the baseball work stoppage, which a lot of my friends say they don't think anything's going to happen there. I could see that going really south really fast.
Yeah. Well, you saw when Rob Manfred, who does go around and meets with each team during the season, which I give him credit for. I mean, I at least give him credit for showing up. Got into, and Bryce Harper said, hey, no cap. And it turned into a shouting match. Now, the point that Manfred needs to make with them is that if you have a cap, what do you also have? A floor.
Right. What comes with it?
Yeah, a floor. You don't think Tampa Bay, the A's, the Pirates, and others, right? They need a floor. They would increase salaries for a bunch of guys out there, and I don't think the upper echelon people realize that.
And it's crazy because the floor is being paid for by the rich teams anyways.
Sure.
It's not like the Pirates are going to get more money to spend. They're just going to take the money that they've been pocketing from the revenue share, and they're going to use it for players. And it's got to be difficult, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, and that's okay. Baseball is living on the street of live events, right? And the neighborhood around you is the NFL, college football playoff, NHL, you've got all these other live event offerings. And baseball has hit record numbers, but they haven't grown as fast as the NBA and the NHL have. They just haven't. And the concern is competitive. People, to me, a lot of times like to spin something that I throw at them often, and I enjoy it. They say, well, look at the EPL. There's no salary cap there. And I said, that's true. But they have different competitions there that keep the smaller programs interested. They have an FA Cup. They have, 3 or 4 different cups throughout the year. They have the Champions League, but then they also have the Europa League, right? They have different things to play for that matter. The problem is, if you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, what are you rooting for? Right. Every now and then you get a team that comes up. The Arizona Diamondbacks are a partner of ours. We love them.
Yeah.
They were in the World Series 2 years ago. They just gutted the entire team.
Right.
They were in the World Series 2 years ago. And so you look at what's happening around you with the NHL as a hard cap and a floor. You look at the NBA, which has profit sharing at 51%. You look at, everybody has a hard cap. I mean, they say that the NBA doesn't necessarily have a hard cap, but anybody who looks into the second apron, that's a hard cap.
Sure it is. Yep, no question.
So I am less optimistic than others because I'm looking at it from the side of if I own the Kansas City Royals or if I own, the Milwaukee Brewers, who are competitive, and I'm looking at what the Yankees are doing. I'm looking at what the Dodgers are doing. You're spending $700 million on a player.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Right. Exactly. The next time
are you the Globetrotters and I just get to be the Washington Generals?
I think that's called the Savannah Bananas. All right, so the next time you're on, I want to spend a good chunk of the time about what American sports fans and franchises can learn from what they do in Europe, especially with soccer. Because I think that's a fascinating lesson where you can steal some ideas from them and they're legit to make things better here. So I want to talk about that next time.
But what's fascinating, I'm going to add one thing about the bananas, which somebody told me, which I found so fascinating. This is somebody who's a Harvard PhD in child psychology. They were saying when you and I were kids, we would daydream about hitting the game-winning home run.
Yeah.
Right? We daydream about baseball. Steve Jones comes up, bases loaded, bottom of the ninth. The kids now daydream about their walk-in music.
Yeah.
Look at what the bananas are.
Yeah.
The bananas are walk-in music.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Tony.
It's genius.
It is genius. Always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
We'll see you very soon, I hope.
Yeah, we will.
On the calendar.
No, we're going to talk. We're going to talk in a few weeks about what I just talked about. But I'm going to see you the first week of October.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, brother.
Thanks. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
He's the best. Tony Knopp on News Radio 1070 WKOK.